MrBeast's public image is crashing fast, and it's only getting worse. Over the past few weeks, waves of YouTubers and journalists have been relentlessly exposing new allegations. Each revelation seems to spark another, with this snowball of secrecy quickly turning into an avalanche of public accusations. In this video, we're diving deep into the allegations made by a group of people that I'm calling the enemies of MrBeast, covering the testimonies made by the likes of Jake the Viking, Rosanna Pansino, Ty Ori, Jimmy Donaldson's ex-girlfriend Maddie Spittle, and Nicole Raffi. So let's dive into the first, and perhaps the most prolific person calling out Jimmy, that being Rosanna Pansino. Let's talk about Rosanna Pansino. I'm actually quite surprised that I didn't discuss her whatsoever in my previous video, but she's been one of Jimmy's most vocal critics. If you don't know why, she exposed him last year for misrepresenting her in the edit of his $1 million hide-and-seek video. Essentially, she claimed that while within the original video she was portrayed as coming in 5th place, in actuality she came 3rd. She claims that what actually happened was that Logan Paul came 5th, and that she had seen him seeking after being eliminated herself. Slightly off topic, but between that and the allegations that Logan Paul had insider knowledge in the YouTuber's Fight for $1 Million video, it seems as though Jimmy definitely has a bias for him.
I have a conspiracy theory, or maybe I should say I had a conspiracy theory, that this competition in some way was rigged for Logan Paul.
The pair are evidently friends, and I think that Jimmy believes that Logan Paul makes for good content. With Jimmy always wanting to make the best videos possible, oftentimes what's better for attention isn't what plays out in the game. Entertaining contestants might be eliminated first if you don't interfere. So making the best videos possible and not faking anything oftentimes don't go hand in hand. But I'm getting sidetracked. This was treated as petty drama at the time, as Rosanna had a music video that was dropping very shortly after she came out with the confession. And with Jimmy being YouTube's golden boy at the time, Rosanna was promptly dismissed and apologised for not settling this behind the scenes. But this was the first huge sign that MrBeast's videos were faked, despite their authenticity being one of their largest selling points. Since then, Pansino has been first to the picket line against MrBeast. Her Twitter at this point is almost a shrine to calling out the failings of Jimmy Donaldson. She's really vocalised her disgust at how his Beast games were handled, uploading several videos discussing the poor and unsafe conditions on set.
So the messages that I have received from contestants on the show are pretty much all telling a similar story, and I find them to be very disturbing. At this point, I've lost track, but I think it's nearing like 100 people who have reached out to me with their stories. Each person has their own experience and their own opinions, but overall the stories that I'm hearing just break my heart. I have never heard of anything like this on any set. I'm genuinely worried that if changes don't happen on the set of Beast Games, something more tragic will happen. Amazon gave Jimmy $100 million to make this game show. That is plenty of money to make a safe show. And I want to know, where's the money going? Like, where is the money going? It's not going to pay for the crew and their benefits. It's not going for safety protocol. It's not going to quality food. And it's just interesting to me that someone who claims that they want to give back and they care about people doesn't seem to do it when the cameras aren't rolling. Alright, so this isn't quite the video I thought I'd be filming today, but apparently the first video I made about MrBeast and his Beast games is being suppressed and restricted on TikTok as of today. As of right now, someone is trying to silence me. I'll let you guys try and guess who would do something like that.
She's also since come out to say that she had been told by several different people that MrBeast had hired private investigators in order to dig up dirt and intimidate people who were speaking out about him. This was also what Dogpack 404, aka Dawson, was saying on Twitter, so now we have 2 people that are making this claim. If this is true, then it's perhaps a desperate attempt by Jimmy to try and maintain his dominance. And it would be a scheme that's very much backfired now that the public know about it. However, if these accusations of hiring private eyes and sending out cease and desists weren't enough, Rosanna Pansino then came out on Twitter to claim that MrBeast had hired Matthew Hilzick to defend him. Matthew Hilzick, in case you don't know him, is one of the most effective publicists the world currently knows. He's worked with the likes of Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt, and Hillary Clinton. He also has a Harvey Weinstein connection, having worked under him at Miramax. In regards to this rumour, Rosanna wrote, "MrBeast has hired Matthew Hilzik's crisis management company. Matthew Hilzik began his PR career at Weinstein's Miramax. Matthew Hilzik is a lawyer and publicist who represents politicians and Hollywood figures. Shortly after MrBeast hired Matthew, a MrBeast company email was leaked. I believe this was their first strategic move, attempting to rebuild Jimmy's image to the public." If this is true, and Jimmy actually has sought the help from one of Hollywood's top PR professionals, it means he's panicked. If the cease and desists and potential hiring of PIs don't tell you that already, this lays it out clear as day that he must think that there is a reasonable chance that his position as the golden boy of YouTube is now under threat. And with Pansino's recent video exposing the secrets of MrBeast, Jimmy might have a good reason to be afraid. Within that video, she goes through the How to Succeed at MrBeast document. Of course, this document was first revealed to the mainstream public in Dogpack 404's I Worked for MrBeast, He's a Sociopath. This document shows what Rosanna describes as toxicity from top to bottom within the MrBeast brand. She says that this is a mask-off document to show what Jimmy is truly like. She says that Jimmy comes off here as condescending and hypocritical, exposing his benevolent persona as merely a facade. For example, Donaldson writes that you shouldn't spend large sums of money unless you're capturing it on camera. The document also notes that he separates workers into 3 tiers: A players, B players, and C players. C players are the lowest of these. They're workers that clock into work, gladly do their shift, and leave. They're not hyper-obsessive. They're described as poisonous and should be fired immediately. A and B type players are expected to work on multiple videos a day, are expected to pull all-nighters consistently, and are told that even if the building is burning down around them, they are expected to fulfill their obligations. In Rosanna's and many of her supporters' opinion, this document paints a picture of an egomaniac boss who has no room for critique and no time for employees that want a healthy work-life balance, with those people promptly getting the sack. If you want to learn more about the work culture at MrBeast from MrBeast himself, I'll link both Pansino's video and the document in the description. And speaking of ex-employees, let's move on to another enemy of MrBeast, a former friend now turned foe who goes by the name Jake Weddle. So you might have already heard of Jake Weddle because a couple of years ago he used to be on-screen talent for MrBeast, but he was later let go for reasons we'll get into later. He came out within part 2 of Dogpack's expose on MrBeast within a video titled I Worked for MrBeast, He's a Sociopath. If you want a full recounting of his story, you could watch that one, or his recent videos on his time at the company. I don't want to linger too long on his story because he tells it better and in much more detail than I ever could, but he claims that about 2 years ago he was meant to be in a MrBeast video titled $10,000 Every Day You Survive in Prison. If you've seen this video, you would know that a guy called Josh was the contestant. However, as evidenced by this behind the scenes image, Jake was at one point in there. Based upon his orange jumpsuit, I think that we can take his word that he was at one point featuring in this video. Now, he claims that the treatment he received was entirely unfair. He was making $10,000 a day, but claims to have greatly suffered because of his time in there. He claims that they never once turned the lights off so that they could get time-lapse shots of him sleeping. There was an ice cream machine that stank when it was turned off and was consistently churning loudly when it was on, and on one of the days he was forced to run a marathon despite not being an athletic person and being horribly sleep deprived on account of the lights always being on. This was apparently a violation of the Geneva Convention, which is wild to say. MrBeast violating the Geneva Convention was not on my 2024 bingo card.
And I go up to my friend, my good friend. And I go, they're not turning the lights off. He goes, what? That's a war crime. We're not allowed to do that to terrorists.
Eventually, this all got too much, and the video apparently took a dark turn, with Jake getting out early. The video was therefore scrapped, but later revived, and the contestant was changed to Josh. Jake then alleged some more things within his responses. He claims that he wasn't liked at the company because he wasn't a yes man. He claims that he was fired alongside a fellow employee because he asked for a change of salary. And perhaps most damning was that he claimed that Jimmy is a wolf in sheep's clothing, trying to come off as charitable and philanthropic when he actually thinks less of the poor.
My other good friend told me that when I got the money, Jimmy said, "Why is he mad? That's more money than he'll ever see in his life." I know how this guy thinks of the poor. I know how this guy uses the poor. Because that's what he thought of me.
Some people think that it's ironic what happened next though, as they think that after saying all of that, Jake had been bought out by Jimmy. According to Jake, Jimmy privately reached out and apologised, asking if there was anything that could be done to make amends.
When it comes to me, Jimmy personally apologized. And he offered me money I wasn't comfortable accepting. But the understanding is he made an attempt to make it right, and I appreciated that. And that was all I needed. But I also got a little bit of change that I felt a little more comfortable taking, and the ability to stay true to myself and exist on this platform, and that to me is worth $1 gajillion.
He offered Jake the rest of the money that was meant to be spent on his video, $190,000. Jake refused that sum, but asked for $50,000 instead to pay off his debts. Some people think that this was therefore just for clout, or that his integrity is now compromised. Others, of course, think that provided he still speaks out, his payment is nothing more than righting a wrong. So what do you think? But from one Jake to another, let's now discuss one of his most controversial enemies, that being Jake the Viking. Just to jog your memories in case you didn't see my Ava Chris Tyson or first MrBeast video, Jake the Viking used to be a part of MrBeast in the late 2010s when the channel was really beginning to kick into gear. But he was later let go because, in his words, his piece no longer fit the puzzle. While he initially came out to say that there were no hard feelings, especially over the past year or so, Jake the Viking has been one of the channel's biggest critics, and in the fallout of these allegations, he's never missed an opportunity to condemn MrBeast. He said that Jimmy knew that Ava had groomed minors. He mentioned that the community notes on Jimmy's response to Ava was taken down suspiciously quickly, and he thinks that MrBeast or someone at the company have lied or fabricated details. However, once it was revealed that Delaware was his brother-in-law, the tide quickly began to turn against Jake. To quickly summarise his post about it, he stated that Delaware took a plea deal after being accused of SA by a 16-year-old. According to Jake, this incident would have taken place 5 years prior when she was 11 years old, back in 2010. He also revealed that Delaware was actually hired before he was, and was the reason why Jake got hired at all. He claims that Delaware was put in a video reluctantly, but since they needed numbers, he agreed to do it. He wore the mask on his own request. Jake finishes the post by saying that he believes in Delaware's innocence, and that he's always been a good husband and father to his sister and nieces respectively. Apparently, Delaware's charges are set to be dropped this autumn. Now, in response, people passionately called out Jake for his handling of the situation. Jake had previously been ardent in calling Ava out for the Discord chats and the purchasing of Shadman's art, even calling Jimmy complicit. But the fact that he knew that Delaware, someone who's on the register, actually worked at MrBeast and continues to defend him means that in many people's eyes, he's just as bad, if not worse, than Jimmy. The responses were fairly ruthless. The strange thing here though, and something that was picked up by a community note, was that Jake's claims are also not consistent. Here, he's fairly passionate about how Delaware is innocent, saying, "I firmly believe he did nothing wrong." However, after Turkey Tom called him out, saying that it was funny that Jake was saying all this, considering he had such skeletons in his own closet, Jake stated, "So just because I know someone who did something bad and was convicted means I can't call out others for doing bad?" This is contradictory in itself though, because if Jake truly believes that Delaware is innocent, then he didn't do anything bad, did he? In fact, you might even say that he's a victim. It's tough to say where Jake truly lies on this because his responses are inconsistent. Does he actually think that Delaware is innocent? Or does he think that Delaware did it, but because it was 14 years ago and he's since been punished, atoned, and moved on, Jake thinks that it should no longer matter? Whatever the case, in the eyes of many, these new revelations have made it so that Jake's testimonies can no longer be trusted, and so this is one enemy of MrBeast's who probably won't be too much of a threat, especially considering that Jimmy didn't even have to reply to him for Jake's words to be disregarded by large sums of the internet. Of course, he still has his supporters, but their numbers have greatly diminished since the truth came out. Let's move on to another person that could be considered to be in opposition to Jimmy. This is yet another person who's also received a lot of flack since coming out, that being Jimmy's ex-girlfriend, Maddie Spidell. On the 8th of August 2024, MrBeast's ex-girlfriend, named Maddie Spidell, made a post to her Instagram story where she finally weighed in on Jimmy. She went as far as tagging YouTube, saying, "You need to reevaluate who you're putting on the trending page." She went on to say that she had spent years being silent, and that she didn't want any drama, but did want to speak up for her 19-year-old self. A lot of this post is quite cryptic, but you can pause the video now if you want to take a look at the full thing. Anyway, towards the end she states, "I believe I should be used as a cautionary tale. If something is too good to be true, it probably is. How he treats other women will ultimately be how he treats you. You are smart, beautiful, and capable of a career, life, and relationship you are proud of." She reiterated that this wasn't meant to be a takedown, but then said that there are some scary people out there that want to hurt you, use you, and spit you out, saying that we should protect our friends, mums, wives, sisters, and daughters, telling people to speak up. Now, a lot of people were quite upset with this response because it's shrouded in enigma. Maddie says a lot without actually saying much, and it's tough to decipher what she means because she refuses to get into details. She would respond to people's criticism on Twitter within a post where she said that she didn't need to say anything. It seems as though she really doesn't care for the spotlight that speaking about this casted on her, with Maddie privating her Twitter shortly after this post. However, for the most part, because we don't know the specifics of what she's talking about, it's tough to analyse it. The line about his treatment of women, alongside specifically mentioning female family members in the last paragraph, might be alluding to perhaps sexism or misogyny on his part, but since the post is indirect and vague, all I can do is speculate. Keep in mind that as his ex-girlfriend, these posts could be motivated by vengeance. We don't know what happened between the two of them in the final stages of their relationship. To add to that, it definitely doesn't seem as though Maddie's going to shed any light on it, so maybe Jimmy did something awful which caused the two to break up and her criticism of him comes from something that he did. Or maybe it was a more mutual breakup, or perhaps even she was at fault, but she's now decided to come out and get her licks in whilst the MrBeast brand and Jimmy's public image are as vulnerable as they've ever been. And I think it's time to discuss the man that made his public image vulnerable in the first place. This video wouldn't be possible without Dogpack 404. Just like Jake Weddle, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I've already discussed Dogpack 404 at length. But with his two MrBeast videos accumulating over 25 million views, Dogpack has really been the one leading the charge against Jimmy. A rogue ex-employee, he first rose to prominence after making a Twitter video saying that the Ava Chris Tyson stuff was just the tip of the iceberg, and he was completely correct. Over the past month or so, his claims and actions have put the MrBeast brand in serious jeopardy. He was the one to bring forward the accusations of MrBeast faking giveaways, faking several videos, illegal lotteries, the manipulation of child psychology, hiring friends as extras, having charities as a front, the raccoon as a hired actor. He gave Jake Weddle a platform to speak out, and therefore it was in his video where the Delaware scandal was revealed. If anyone, he is MrBeast's arch nemesis. As I said, I only wanted to briefly cover him here, especially since I spoke about him in both my first video on MrBeast and my video on Ava, so you probably know him and what he's done already. But it would be impossible to speak about the enemies of MrBeast without discussing Dawson. But moving on from perhaps the most high profile case to now one of the more lesser known ones, let's discuss a guy called Ty. I'm not too sure how to pronounce his surname. It could be Ore or Aura. Either way, I'm just gonna call him Ty. But the long and short of it is that Ty claims that MrBeast hired him for a fake position, stole his ideas, let go of him, and gave him nothing in return. So let's talk about that. On the 10th of August 2024, Ty uploaded a video titled, "I worked for MrBeast, he's a thief." To walk you through this video, Ty revealed that in February this year, the MrBeast company reached out to him to state that he could potentially be hired by the company if he wanted to work for them. However, Ty alleges that this was actually a fake job, and that after working tirelessly for them at a trial, his ideas were taken and he was dismissed. He shows his personal Facebook posts throughout this video, with all of the posts he made timestamped back to February. For him to go through all of the work to fake this would be quite impressive. I am therefore inclined to believe that at the very least the beginning of his story is true. He was contacted by the MrBeast company. He's very upfront with the fact that he has receipts, and that he's more than willing to turn over every piece of evidence in order to make sure that people believe what he's saying.
So now we're gonna get into like the more just deep in the details here. So like I said, if I don't show proof, don't assume that I'm telling the truth. If I don't show proof for everything that I'm saying, assume that I'm literally lying about everything that I'm saying, okay?
He went on to say that as a recruitment task, he was told to come up with ideas that could be implemented within potential MrBeast video prompts. There was one about spending $1 billion in 24 hours, and then one about the world's most dangerous trap room. Ty decided to choose the most dangerous trap room prompt, and then wrote his ideas for what kind of things could be featured within that video. He sent this over, and would later be invited to MrBeast Studios by recruitment to see if he would make a good fit. Apparently, the team were working on ideas for an upcoming video, the world's deadliest obstacle course. And this was when Ty had an idea. He thought to take his concept from the trap room prompt and see if people wanted to use it in this. Ty claims that after working late, he pitched these ideas, and they went over very well with the higher-ups. These people absolutely loved his concepts, and were excited to take them forward. However, after he flew back home, he received an email stating that he would not be getting the job since the company was restructuring things at the time. According to Ty, this would be deceit, as when MrBeast announced on Twitter that the obstacle course had been released, Ty realised that his ideas had been stolen by the company. If you take a look at the screenshot of his drawing, it looks eerily similar to the final product. Ty claims that he was never compensated for this. He gave over these ideas under the pretense of a job offer, when in reality he thinks that no such job ever existed. Ty thought this entire thing was especially strange because it wasn't just him, there were a bunch of people that were apparently trying out for a job at the MrBeast studio. So how could the recruitment be so certain that there would be plenty of jobs to go around, so that they would invite probably dozens of people, groups of people it's described in Ty's video, to go around and see if they fit in, to give over their best ideas in the hopes of landing one of these jobs, and then only a few days later, these jobs just didn't exist. Then, a couple of months later, an idea thought up by one of these recruits was the hook to a new video. If this happened to Ty, who else did it happen to? Especially for a brand as large as MrBeast, if this is true and they did use his ideas and design without paying him anything, it's very shady, and it's yet another devastating hit to the brand's public image. Dogpack 404 would then come out on Twitter to say that it's likely that MrBeast did in fact steal Ty's ideas, saying that he regularly does this without giving compensation or credit. Now, I would be remiss not to mention that Ty's video has been met with some backlash, because at the end he decides to plug a GoFundMe, one that was able to rack up a few $100s before Ty took it down and refunded the donators. Many people within the comment section of Ty's video were saying that the GoFundMe, which had a goal of $1.7 million by the way, as that was the budget for this idea, was a money-grabbing move, and proved that Ty was only trying to make bank off the situation. And these people weren't entirely wrong either, as Ty himself said that he wanted to make some money because of this, or rather that he wanted to be compensated for his contribution to a video that is now sitting at around 200 million views. In response to the GoFundMe backlash, Ty pinned a comment to the video saying that every penny would be refunded and that it was a boneheaded move with no ill intent. However, this decision has led many people to now be skeptical of where his true intentions lie. Whether or not you think this move has compromised his message, I'm happy for you to draw your own conclusion, as now we turn our attention to an emerging enemy of MrBeast. She's just the latest in a long line of influencers who have now broken their silence. Her name is Nicole Raffi. On the 12th of August 2024, a new gladiator would enter the arena, one that would throw her spear directly into the heart of the limping lion that was MrBeast's reputation. It would now be Nicole Raffy's turn to speak out. Within the 22nd episode of her podcast, Talk Nasty, she and her friend Jake revealed that they were both in a MrBeast video. In fact, they were in his second most popular video of all time, Last to Leave Circle Wins $500,000, participating as part of Team Yellow. Within this podcast, they really spill the tea. Firstly, they corroborated someone else's allegations against Jimmy. As it turns out, they alleged that when they were part of this video, it was actually taking place at the same time as Jake Weddle's solitary confinement.
And what Jake and I were kind of like realizing while we were watching this were that we knew about all these situations that were happening.
Because we were like basically there.
Nicole and Jake's testimonies add legitimacy to his claims that he was being unfairly treated, because somehow, apparently the news of his deterioration spread to the contestants on that set.
There was this whole story that he told about how on his like 20th day or something like that, he was really struggling mentally, and they decided to put him on a treadmill to run a marathon, even though he had never trained for a marathon, and he was like running until 3 a.m. and like blisters on his feet and everything, and he just basically was really suffering mentally and like had to like exit. We knew about that. We were told about that situation.
I think he was doing that marathon the day that we went into the circle.
Because we were told about that, like, yeah, there's a guy who's like literally doing a marathon right now. Like, he is not well. Like, he is not doing well. And that video never came out. And I was like, where the fuck is that video? Like, I remember thinking that afterwards. I mean, like, where did that video go? And he confirmed in that expose video, he was like, yeah, they scrapped it. They had to do a completely other
because it went
video.
So poorly
because it went
for
so
him.
bad. And because he was clearly suffering mentally so bad, and he didn't even get to win the full, what was it, $300,000?
They were also skeptical of the first contestant that was eliminated. As it turns out, this contestant was Mac. You might know him from being in other MrBeast videos. He's well known to be in with both Jimmy and Eric. And after choosing to be eliminated first, he was gifted a brand new car.
I was worried that it was going to be more so a physical challenge, because I don't think that I could have handled as much of a physical challenge, because there were many very strong, ripped, huge buff guys that were in the group, which turned out are like a lot of them like friends and reoccurring guests in this Minecraft server.
So we're like in there like the first few, I'd say like first 2 hours, and that guy Mac decide like
MrBeast basically gave an incentive that the first person to get out would receive something.
Yes.
They would receive something. And for some reason, this guy Mac decides to step out first. He decides to get out of the circle first. And what does he win? A car.
Like, I don't think if, you know, we got out first, we would be getting a car.
Did we know at the time that they were friends? Was he filming?
I didn't know that.
He was filming with Eric, I think.
No, I think Eric was filming his own thing.
Yeah, but I think Mac...
But they were talking, like they were like together.
It just seemed very convenient.
Yeah.
And that is what one of the guys, was it Jake Weddle who mentioned that, or Dogman or whatever?
This was something mentioned by Dogpack within his initial MrBeast video, that being that a lot of people who are in these challenges are friends and family members of MrBeast. Mac, of course, has been in videos with Eric and MrBeast since. So perhaps Nicole and Jake's conspiracy theory is right, and that if someone else had eliminated themselves first, someone that MrBeast didn't know, their prize would have been much smaller. Nonetheless, Nicole and Jake would continue to spill the tea.
Especially when a lot of the people that he does include in videos, because he does always say, like, I had 100 random subscribers. Like, it is not random. It is not random whatsoever, because a good chunk are reoccurring people, a good chunk are people who he knows, like on personal friends.
People who production knows. People who have a following.
Or friends of friends of friends, which is like literally like our situation. Like I'm gonna be completely honest. I was not a subscriber of MrBeast before I did that. I didn't watch MrBeast videos. I was not a random subscriber that got randomly chosen to be in a MrBeast video.
The pair continue by revealing that though they were allegedly told that they'd be compensated for every day spent in isolation because this video was shot during the back end of COVID, they then went on to claim that initially they were not paid for their days in quarantine, with staff allegedly saying that there was never any promised compensation. Only after many people spoke out about it were they granted an extra $1,000 each. Considering this, a lot of people were missing out on work for this, and the quarantine was 5 days, this would definitely eat into their winnings if they were eliminated early. But speaking of bias and quarantining, the two then made the claim that they believe that Eric, who was also a part of this video, did not isolate.
Only to find out that Eric, quite literally, there was no possible way for him to be quarantining those 5 days prior to the shooting of everything, because he was recording at a music festival that just ended
during our,
like, the day before the first day of shooting. So it is quite literally impossible that he was quarantining for those 5 days. If anything, he was actually around a greater amount of people. And at the time, like, I believe the rules with everything was that it had to wait 5 to 14 days for symptoms to occur.
They continued by saying that while they did believe that he was tested, the clear favoritism that Eric was shown was unfair. If other contestants were threatened with disqualification if they broke quarantine rules, how was it fair if one wasn't? If this is true, then it's really not a good look. And it feeds back into Dawson's accusations of playing favourites, of rigging the competition, and having reserved spots for MrBeast's friends, while saying that contestants are chosen at random. Furthermore, they then spoke about withholding medication, which was also exposed by the New York Times at the start of the month. Nicole's experience sounded very similar to the testimonies detailed by the Times.
Carl gave me my birth control.
Oh my god.
MrBeast withheld my birth control. I got a lot of, like...
We were trying to flag down production. We were like, anyone, hey. And Carl comes over and you're like, okay.
A lot of people laughed at me in my MrBeast video being like, that's the medication you needed, birth control? I'm like,
it's because they're 12. They don't know what birth control is.
I have ovarian cysts. You can't just stop taking birth control. You can't just stop taking hormonal medication out of the blue, out of nowhere.
If you can remember, the Times stated that people's medications were withheld by the staff on the set of Beast Games, MrBeast's new Amazon show. As I said in my last video, I want to reiterate that when it comes to medication, that is completely irrelevant to challenges. Giving people insulin, or in Nicole's case, birth control, will not give them an unfair advantage on the rest of the competition. All that said, a lot of people are gunning for Jimmy right now, some of whom have put quite a lot on the line to do it. Time will only tell whether or not what they've had to say will actually make a difference. If you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you want to check out more of my content, then why not take a look at my video on the tragic reality of family channels? That video also exposed the seedy underworld of YouTube content, so if you enjoyed this, I think that one would be good to look at next. Aside from that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.